In many ways, California is an undeniable success story. If it were an independent nation, it would rank as the fifth largest economy globally, boasting a GDP larger than that of India and the UK, and is poised to surpass Germany soon. It would also be among the top 5 countries with the highest GDP per capita, wealthier than Switzerland and even every Scandinavian country. California is home to 10% of the U.S.'s top 1,000 companies, holds significant oil reserves, and serves as both the technological and cultural hub of the United States. By nearly every measure, California's economy is remarkable. Yet, despite such tremendous achievements, the state is simultaneously struggling in dramatic ways. Over the past 2 years, both individuals and businesses have been leaving California for other states, causing its population to decline for the first time ever. Residents are burdened by sky-high living costs, a severe housing crisis, and ever-increasing inequality. Despite having the highest taxes and largest budget of any state, California also has the highest poverty rate in the entire country and leads in homelessness by a significant margin. How is it possible for a state to succeed and fail so drastically at the same time? When and how did this happen? And can California overcome its current challenges? Or is the situation bound to worsen? This is the dark side of California, the California dream. For a long time, California has held a unique allure, dating back to the mid-1800s when large gold reserves were discovered, sparking the Californian gold rush and drawing hundreds of thousands of people westward. This era birthed the concept of the California dream, a vision where anyone willing to take risks could achieve wealth and success in a land full of opportunity. However, the modern Californian economic miracle didn't occur until the mid-20th century, when the economy began growing exponentially and the population doubled within just 20 years. The key driver behind this boom? War. When World War II broke out, California became a major production center for military equipment. As the Cold War ensued, billions were invested in the arms race with the Soviet Union, giving rise to the U.S.'s military-industrial complex, much of which was based in California. This booming industry generated immense wealth and required millions of workers, which further accelerated California's economic and population growth. The military's influence also established California as a global tech hub, as much of the cutting-edge technology at the time was born from military research. 40% of the entire U.S. military budget for research and development was funneled into California, creating an ecosystem ripe for innovation and high-tech industries. California's advantage wasn't just its burgeoning tech sector. It also had a network of top-tier universities that didn't just produce highly skilled graduates, but also fostered collaboration between the military and private companies. Universities like Stanford pioneered the idea of turning academic research into real-world businesses. Venture capital firms soon emerged to fund these entrepreneurial ideas in exchange for a share of future profits. The combination of private and public funding, prestigious universities, innovative companies, and a culture of entrepreneurship created a potent and powerful mix. This environment gave rise to some of the most successful companies in the U.S., created high-paying jobs, and attracted talented people from all over the country, further fueling California's growth. But just as everything seemed to be going well, things started to unravel. The first nail in the coffin. In the mid-1970s, California was at its peak. The economy was booming, the defense and tech sectors were expanding, and the population continued to grow as more people moved to California for its opportunities. But around this time, a shift began. Though it seemed minor at first, it eventually proved to be the first sign of trouble for the California dream. In the 1970s, a movement known as NIMBY, Not in My Backyard, began to take hold. This wasn't a formal organization, but a growing trend of locals opposing construction and development in their neighborhoods. While understandable to some extent, the issue was that if no one wanted anything built near them, then nothing would get built anywhere. Unfortunately, this sentiment was soon adopted by local politicians, resulting in policies that underlie many of California's current problems. First, the state altered its zoning laws, imposing strict regulations on what types of real estate could be developed in certain areas. Many parts of California only allowed for the construction of single-family homes, which meant that vast portions of the state ended up looking like this rather than this. At the same time, growing environmental concerns led to even stricter regulations and designated more land for preservation, further limiting available space for development. On top of that, California handed more control over land use decisions to local homeowners, who became involved in the approval process for new projects. But existing homeowners generally opposed new construction because it would reduce their comfort and property values. As a result, even less housing was built. Meanwhile, California's population continued to grow, causing home prices to skyrocket. Between 1970 and 2016, home prices more than quadrupled, increasing 80% faster than in the rest of the country. The crisis begins. While home prices were soaring and becoming increasingly unaffordable, California's economic landscape began to shift as well. In the early 1990s, the Cold War came to an end, and after decades of relentless arms races and immense military spending, the U.S. was finally able to cash in on its peace dividend. However, this was bad news for California. After 5 decades of growth, the state's military and research budgets were drastically slashed, and the funding that had sustained California's defense industry dried up. The consequences for the state's economy were devastating. Unemployment and poverty surged as major companies either went under or relocated to states with lower taxes to cut costs. Even though California's economy eventually rebounded, something had changed forever. Hundreds of thousands of blue-collar jobs that had supported ordinary working-class individuals vanished and never returned. These jobs were replaced by a much smaller number of high-paying, highly skilled positions in the tech industry. However, these tech jobs weren't nearly enough to employ all the people who had been laid off, and many were filled by highly qualified workers relocating from other parts of the country. From the state's perspective, this didn't seem like a major problem. The booming tech sector generated just as much, if not more, value as the defense industry, and it contributed significantly to tax revenues. But for the everyday people of California, it mattered greatly. The tech sector didn't provide nearly as many jobs, leading to a sharp increase in inequality. Many decent-paying jobs were replaced by a smaller number of highly paid ones, and the middle class began to shrink. Meanwhile, the cost of living and housing continued to climb. And everything gets worse. As housing became even less affordable and blue-collar jobs continued to disappear, the California government made the fateful decision to cut funding for social programs, including state-funded mental health institutions. Without state support, these institutions could no longer treat the people they served, leading to the closure of many facilities. This resulted in thousands of individuals with severe mental health issues being forced onto the streets. At the same time, the state was already dealing with a growing homeless population, driven by rising living costs and the federal government's decision to halt funding for affordable, subsidized housing for those in poverty. In response, California adopted a policy that became known as tolerant containment, a strategy that is now widely regarded as a failure. This policy involved pushing homeless people into designated containment areas, where they were allowed to camp on the streets and were often provided with basic amenities by local governments. This was in stark contrast to cities like New York, which has a comparable homeless population to Los Angeles, but operates a state-funded shelter system. California's approach was meant to contain the issue to specific areas without costing the government too much. However, as the homeless population continued to grow, the containment strategy became unsustainable. Without a proper shelter system, the crisis quickly spiraled out of control. Today, California is home to over 170,000 homeless individuals, more than any other state, both in absolute terms and per capita. While California accounts for just 12% of the U.S. population, it hosts 30% of the nation's homeless population. Since 2017 alone, the homeless population has increased by 40,000 people, meaning it has risen by nearly a third in just 5 years. Tragically, this homelessness crisis is one of the main reasons people cite when explaining why they've decided to leave the state. Grim future. So, what lies ahead for California? Unfortunately, the outlook for the Golden State is bleak, at least in the short to midterm. While the population decline may slow down, it's unlikely to stop or reverse. Half of California's residents are currently considering moving out. Although the state government is aware of the housing crisis and claims it wants to encourage more construction, it has yet to deliver any real results. Inequality continues to widen. The gap between the rich and the poor grows larger, and California's homeless population keeps expanding. While the state's economy remains strong for now, if the trend of companies relocating due to worsening living conditions and high taxes persists, the economy will eventually feel the impact. Even today, California's massive state budget isn't enough to cover all its expenses, and without significant changes, the future of the Golden State looks far from bright. If you like this video, please like and subscribe to the channel. Here are the sources we consulted for this video. Don't forget to leave your suggestions in the comments below. See you in the next video.
Thanks for watching.